safeguard these mines because they're hazards. So there could be unstable ground or loose rock, potential for collapse if you were to be walking over them or through them, fall or entrapment hazards. And then within the mines too, there could be steep falls, water bodies, collapses, havens, gases, all sorts of issues with leaving these mines open. So the Capitol Dome Abandoned Mine Safeguarding Project, the project purpose and need is to safeguard the general public from hazards associated with historical mining features, including adits, shafts, subsidence features, and other mine openings, while protecting the cultural resources and preserving wildlife habitat in this area. So, the Capitol Dome project area within the Florida Mountains, it's about a 1,900 acre area of potential effect, which is essentially the project area. About 1,400 acres of those are managed by the BLM, and 1,000 of those acres are within the Florida Mountains Wilderness Study Area. There's about 470 acres of privately owned land, as well as 13 acres managed by the New Mexico State Land Office. And then within this project area, there's an estimated 210 mines within the APE. 67 extreme risk, 29 high risk, 37 medium, 62 low, and 15 none. So we have the BLM danger level definitions of what these risk category means. A lot of it has to do with the depth of the features. So extreme, 20 feet to over 100 feet deep. High being more 8 to 20 feet deep. Moderate 5 to 8. And then low risk is like less than 5 feet deep. So these have been categorized. And then this is the project area. I know it's going to be difficult to see on this, so like I said, we can revisit on this larger map later if we need to talk about any specific areas. And so we've got the pink there is the area of potential effect. So the project area, the little cross hatches are mine features. For the land management, the gold color is the BLM, the blue is the state lands, and then that sort of dark gold line going around it, that's the wilderness study area. So you can see some of the APE is within it and some of it is not. So the Capitol Dome project would include safeguarding the approximately 210 hazardous mine features in the area. This could include manually or mechanically filling the mine features with waste material or the polyurethane foam. Another option, which would be used for some features, is to build wildlife compatible closures. So it's barriers that restrict human access, but wildlife, particularly bats especially, can still use those features, but they aren't a hazard anymore for the public. For this project, because of the project area being the Florida Mountains, the rugged area, it would be a lot of very small equipment, backhoes, trucks, and then also due to the access situation and the wilderness study area, helicopters would be used to bring in materials for some locations as well. So here are just some pictures of previous closures or safeguarding features from the AML. Some of these may be used, some of them might not. It just depends on the particular feature. So we have an airflow structure there that keeps the mine safeguarded, but the airflow can still go through it, which you can keep bat habitat. There we've got many bat gates, so again it's safeguarded, but the bats are still able to get through it. And yeah, so these are the options where for the most part wildlife will still be able to use the features, but they are safeguarded. Similar on this side, attic closure with a bat gate on it. Whereas these pictures here show the pictures before and after of an open feature that has been more of the manually filled, permanently filled, and then up there is an example of the polyurethane foam plug, so it's been filled in completely. And just a few more pictures just to give you an idea of some of the features that may or may not be used for this area. So in order to do this project, there are a few resource surveys that need to be completed ahead of time. One of these are some natural resource surveys. So Grouse Mountain Consultants conducted some of these in last year, 2023, and there's a few more planned for this year. So the survey was to look for hydrological features as well as wildlife features in the area. So we looked for any wetlands or hydrology features, but there are no wetlands and the drainage is our we also assessed the area for any federally threatened and endangered species, so that included looking at species that may be present and then assessing whether habitat is there or not. We also need to adhere to the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, so while we were out there, we were looking for any bird nests in the area and mapping those. There's also a number, 114, state threatened, state endangered, species of greatest conservation need, and or BLM sensitive species. There's a lot of overlap with those lists, so we just sort of combined it into one whole list. So 114 of those that we either surveyed for or just assessed habitat suitability for. Of those, we only actually located, so there's Orcutt's pincushion, it's a small cactus there in the picture. Those are present quite a bit throughout the APE. Rock rattlesnake, the banded rock rattlesnake is a sensitive species. We located rock rattlesnake, whether it's the banded one or not, sure, because we were not capturing them. And then some loggerhead shrikes, that's a type of bird, a species of greatest conservation need. Those were also found in the area. In addition, Bat Conservation International has been doing multiple surveys of the area, so they've surveyed some, and then there'll be some more surveys coming up in the future. They actually go within each mine feature to look for bat species, and then also just to assess the habitat suitability of each mine feature. And then from that, they give closure recommendations for whether it's suitable or not. So if the features are not suitable for, or maybe just marginal bat habitat, then they typically recommend destructive closures or permanent closures. And the features with maybe marginally better, good, or excellent habitat, they will recommend those bat wildlife friendly closures. And during their surveys, they did find the Townsend's big-eared bats, big brown bats, and some identified species, as well as quite a few other wildlife species using some of these features. We've got wood rats, small mammals, ringtail cat, Helena, some large mammal sign, owls and other birds, and snakes, including the rattlesnakes, and a few mines they had to stop surveys for bees, so there are some bees. So from both of these surveys, the natural resource surveys and from BCI, Grouse Mountain has prepared a biological evaluation. This is just a document that assesses impacts to these natural resources. And this is currently in a draft situation. We need to finish a few surveys and then it will be finalized. But what we found so far from these surveys is that there will be minimal effects to vegetation. AML will be using existing roads where possible, and helicopters otherwise, and then disturbed areas would be seeded with native seeds, so these would be restored. And then there would be no impacts to any wetlands or waters of the U.S. because they're not present. There's a no effect determination for any federally listed species threatened or endangered. There's no critical habitat in the area. In general, there's no general habitat, and they just aren't known to occur in this area. And then for the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, There are some nests present, so there would be some recommendations to mitigate potential impacts to migratory birds. And then out of the 114 state threatened, endangered species of conservation need and BLM species, 76 of them there's no effect because there's no habitat or presence in this location. A lot of those species are found in other mountain ranges in this area, but not the Floridas. So 76 no effect on those. For 38 species, it's a may affect individuals, but not likely to contribute to a federal listing. So that means we might affect a few individuals, but we're not going to be affecting anything at a population level. And some of these temporary effects to wildlife would be short-term and localized displacement during construction, but there's suitable habitat adjacent. They can leave for the time being while they're constructing that. And yes, oh sorry, I'll jump back up. Some potential mitigation measures for these effects that could be in place could be some timing restrictions. So like not doing the construction during the nesting period would be an example. Also with bats, like if it's a hibernacula, then maybe you don't do it in winter. Like there are some recommendations for that. Could also conduct clearance surveys to where you survey the area ahead of disturbance. If you find it, say a bird nest, you can flag it and that would be disturbed for that time period. Same with a biological monitor that could be used for, say, the pincushion cactus to go out and find where they are right where they're doing the activities and try and protect those during that time period. And then the wildlife friendly closures is one of the biggest ones. The fact that if it is good bat habitat, doing one of those friendly closures so the bats still have their habitat there. Here's just a few pictures. This is not from this project, but they are similar species to what was found in this area, and just some fun pictures of them using these mine features. Also, prior to this project, there were some cultural resource inventory and evaluation. This is to comply with the National Historic Preservation Act, the National Cultural Properties Act, the New Mexico Prehistoric and Historic Sites Preservation Act, and the New Mexico Cultural Properties Act. So, SWCA Environmental Consultants conducted a 1,600 acre inventory back in 2014. They found 41 sites, 6 historic properties, some isolated occurrences, and some of these 38 are eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. And then 130 acre inventory was done by Chronicle Heritage last year. They found 5 new sites, so they were in a separate area. 5 new sites, some more isolated occurrences, 2 of these were eligible. And of all these sites, the vast majority of them are related to the mining history. So that's what most of these sites are. And then there's an additional 170 acre inventory planned for this year to hit a little bit more of the area that hasn't been covered yet. So after these resource surveys are complete, then Grouse Mountain is planning to prepare an environmental assessment. So this is to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act. This project is federally funded, and that means it is a requirement to comply with that act. And part of that act requires public involvement. So that's part of why we're here today, is to do that part of and get your comments during this initial process. We also need to address a purpose and need. So again, that's to safeguard the general public from these hazards with mining features, including the adits, shafts, subsidence features, and other mine openings, while protecting the cultural resources and preserving wildlife habitat. Another part of NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, is that it requires you to assess the environmental impacts from a range of alternatives that would meet the purpose and need, and a no-action alternative. So in this EA that we would be preparing, we would be looking at a no-action alternative, which means the project doesn't get done, no work is done. This is essentially to act as a baseline, so you can see the difference between the current situation and impacts to environment if the project were to move forward. We have the proposed proposed action alternative, which is what we discussed, is closing or safeguarding these mine features. And then there's a potential to analyze other alternatives if the project needs it, just to give another option to look at the environmental impacts for it. So during this process for the EA, we'd be looking at those natural resources, the hydrology and the wildlife and the cultural resources that we discussed, and then also other resources that we have not necessarily surveyed for, but we would still be analyzing impacts to. So that may or may not include soils, the visual resources, especially since it is the wilderness study area. So we'd be looking at those other impacts as well. So the approximate schedule for this project right now is we'll have this public scoping comment period will be opening today through March 6th. So you have your opportunity to ask questions and raise any issues or concerns or support or disagreement with the project. This is that chance to do that initially. And then in March, Grouse Mountain will compile and summarize those public comments and contributions, and AML will figure out what that means for the project moving forward. In February, March, there are some of those additional biological and cultural studies will be occurring. And then from about May to July, Grouse Mountain will be preparing that environmental assessment based on those resource studies and the public input we received tonight. And then an estimated August public meeting for when that EA is finalized. So the EA would be posted, so everyone has an opportunity to read through that document, and then so there would be another public meeting at that point, and then also another public comment period would be available then. And at that point, the project, this is still in the initial scoping phases, still in the initial project planning phases, and so at that point in the EA, there'll be more details provided for the project as well as the impacts. So it'll just be a better opportunity to comment at that point as well. And then after the EA is final and approved, there's an estimated early 2025 for project implementation, so when the project would actually start. So this is any additional comments besides the ones from tonight. We can go through questions and comments tonight. But if you do have any additional ones that you would like to ask, please get those in by March 6th. And you can email those to me at the capitalDome_EA_comments at gmecnm.com. Or you can call that number 505-930-5166 and voice those opinions that way as well. And so now we will open it up for any questions or comments. And just let me know if I need to go back to any particular slides.
Okay, who started this?
Who started this?
Who wants this done?
This is the Abandoned Mine Land Program.
This project has been in the works for quite a while, probably more than 10 years. So the BLM has done extensive mine inventory throughout New Mexico. They've documented about 26,000 abandoned mine features in the state so far. And they provide us quite a bit of funding on an annual basis in addition to OSM to safeguard abandoned mines. So the BLM Las Cruces District has put this project before us, and they've wanted these features safeguarded for a number of years. So some of you that are familiar with this area, you've probably seen numerous gates and cupolas and other parts of the Floridas that we built about 10 years ago. And that was in conjunction with the BLM as well. So we did a lot of work at Cooks Peak. So for all of our hard rock projects, most of them are done in coordination with the BLM.
It's going to make it hard for people to get rid of bodies.
Well, and we have done several body searches out here in the past for our BAT associates. No, we don't.
Well, they did a good job.
Yeah. so they're very expensive, and, you know, there's many places someone picked up somebody. And there's only been a couple of instances where our program has actually found some, but there's always rumors that someone was dumped in this shaft, and we've sent people out to check. But this area happens to be, because it's so close to town, and it's one of the more highly visited abandoned mine areas in the state. It's a high importance to both BLM and our program to safeguard these. And just one more thing we do, you know, for claimants and others, most of these have locking removable bars for future access or claimant access, landowner access. So we don't always do a destructive permanent closure.
Are you looking at the Three Sisters area? Is there a lot of open mines down there also?
Yeah, there's hundreds.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
that's another area we've looked at, but right now we're concentrating on this, and we will work on that afterward.
So was this the only project you have coming in the county right now?
Yeah, we just finished up the work at Cooks Peak, and we've done a lot of work on Fluoride Ridge. We are developing, you know, preliminary stuff in this area, but for now, the Floridas are our main project.
Are you going to be doing the whole mountain? Because there's a lot of mining going on.
Well, that's our intent. All these areas that have been circled in magenta are the primary location of all the abandoned mine features that we haven't safeguarded yet. We've probably already safeguarded about 100 in the little Floridas up to the north. Also stuff on state land, what we call the SPAR Group Mine Closure Project. So we've been working out here for over 20 years doing various mine closures.
So was that just the Capitol Dome?
Capitol Dome, National Capitol Dome area is right over here.
Right there.
Like Silver Cave areas down here. The Atir mine is over here. But the West mine, some of the bigger mines that were part of our Bradley project are located a little off of this map.
So are we only talking about the part of Dome?
No, we called it, originally this was called the Mahoney Project because of all the abandoned mines at the top of Mahoney Park. And you used to be able to drive up there, hike up there. That road washed out about 5 or more years ago. Even with a UTV, you really can't get up there. So now we combined that with just these just have all the high priority areas. There's hundreds of prospect pits and things we wouldn't even look at. But most of this is based on the BLM's inventory of high priority abandoned mine features.
So how much of an impact is this gonna have on the IVEX up there?
What about the IMAX?
How much of an impact are you guys gonna have on that habitat that's up there now?
Oh, I don't think so. Our work is very selective because, you know, it's just to the mine features themselves. And I don't know if any IBEX are, you know, we do have Bighorn using features in other areas, and we can't really build a wildlife compatible gate, but we do leave a lot of things open that have bigger wildlife using them if we don't feel they're a hazard to the public as well.
Yeah, and we'll work with the, when we finish with the draft EA, we'll work with New Mexico Game and Fish, and then they may provide recommendations of, hey, if this added 15 feet, you know, can you leave that open for IBEX or other wildlife use? So.
Yeah, go ahead.
What roads are you gonna use to get there? I mean, like, people live out in that area, is it big trucks, small trucks? You said helicopters?
So most of our equipment is, you know, mostly it's pickup trucks hauling like a little backhoe or something. We can't really use big equipment. The main dirt roads that access the base of these features, you know, we can get equipment to some. Capitol Dome, you can drive right into this complex. It's flat, and you can access about 30 features the size of this building here. So, but everywhere else, we would probably use helicopters to drop off equipment. steel, concrete, mesh, other materials.
Will there be any blasting?
No blasting. That's one thing we don't do. Yeah, we don't blast.
If there's something culturally significant in a certain area, or you find a species of bats or something like that in a specific mine area, does that protect that land from anything else taking place there?
Not necessarily. A lot of these sites are eligible to the National Register, but they're not on the National Register of Historic Properties. So for a program like us, we basically avoid all of the other features. So we will flag avoidance areas and important features that were part of the Cultural Resource Survey to be avoided. And also, as far as wildlife, there's several different bat species out here. But the work we're gonna do will allow them to continue to use that habitat.
And if it's a separate project than this AML project, then they would be analyzing these features separately for what they're doing. So, I mean, the cultural resource would be found and documented, so it would be looked at when they're moving forward with another project, but it doesn't necessarily say that that project won't move forward either.
Is this gonna be like, we got like 5 guys go up and they just start and do one and do another one, or are you gonna have multiple?
Generally, I mean, we haven't even decided the scope of construction, but generally, for these kind of projects, you have 4 or 5 people working in a small area at a time. For a project this size and complexity of equipment use and use of helicopters and staging, there would probably be, multiple maybe 2 or 3 phases of construction. But we try to isolate, like this area would be easy. There's about 30 features. We can just go in. That could be a good small project. And then it's up to the engineering staff and others in our group to determine the scale of what would be the next size project.
But you're gonna only have like one group doing all this.
Oh, yes.
You're not gonna have multiple operations.
I'm only asking because we live off a road, we did a project and it had to do with going up our road to get gravel off of state land. And it was tons and tons and tons of semi trucks every single day. It was bad.
And this will be mainly light vehicle, light truck traffic, if there is with, a trailer. No, I don't think we're imagining any semis coming through. It's just usually like trucks, bringing in like back over.
Yeah, I don't live over there, so.
I think this one was
Well, most of the questions have been answered, but my only other concern is this won't have any kind of impact on any of the natural springs up there? Because there's one close by Mahoney Park, I know, is a natural spring.
This will not impact that.
So are you guys done yet?
Huh?
Are you done yet?
Yeah, almost. There's only 25,000 more months. But go ahead.
You projected a start next year. About how long would you anticipate this project taking until completion? And have you, do you have a budget for it? Where the money's coming from, any of that kind of stuff that you're able to disclose now? The length of the project and the cost?
Yeah, so when we do start construction, we'll try to, it's usually easiest to try to work in phases. We'll have to, so our funding comes from the Office of Surface Mining and Reclamation Enforcement. And so we're provided coal funding it's basically a tax on coal that's then provided to different states for claims. So we can use some of that coal funding for this project. I don't know on the budget so far. I think we haven't really kind of talked about numbers for that. I don't know what similar past projects were with like Cooks.
Yeah, I mean, this project will probably cost several $1 million, and we have the funding for that. But as I said earlier, we also get a lot of money from the BLM, and it may not just be our program doing construction. The BLM may decide, once the NEPA is complete, they may pick an area and use their money to safeguard some of these features as well. So, you know, it might be both programs doing work, not necessarily at the same time, but we might do one phase, they might do another phase.
How many years to get it done?
Oh, I mean, I guess at most a couple of years. It's hard because we're capped on how much money that we're available to use every year for Hard Rock. Because we don't receive specific Hard Rock money, we're kind of capped on how much we can use every year. And we would have to have this kind of phased over a couple of years to be able to then utilize all that money for this project.
It's not a very good 401k, is it?
It's not.
I mean, in general, our projects take about 1 to 3 years to finish, depending on the complexity.
Yes.
Why is it, I come to all these meetings, you never hear anybody bring up the fact that this was a test bombing range during World War II. And it's never been cleared because of the cost that it would take to say it's clear and it's okay. You're all talking about doing these things, and no one said a word about, well, it was a test bombing range. We don't even know what all they did up there. Other than they dropped and they shot live ammunition, bombs. You don't know if they used hazardous chemicals. So I mean, y'all do all this, but you never bring that up. Why is that?
I would interject, sir. They were all dummy bombs. I haven't.
No, they were not all dummy bombs.
Yeah,
Sorry. There were live bombs. They blew the shit out of them. Because back then, the government could do whatever it wanted. And again, we don't know if they use hazardous materials, flammable stuff, or whatever.
And so with this,
but nobody ever brings that up. So that's a big issue because they've never been clear. Okay, that means you're not allowed to use any equipment or dig up there because you could run into something.
well, and so that's a good point. So one of the, we were talking about that internally today. So we're gonna actually reach out, I guess the Army Corps of Engineers in Albuquerque has an unexploded ordnance specialist. So we're gonna reach out to them and discuss this project area with them to confirm if there are unexploded ordinances, to what level there are, have they been identified, are they dummy bombs or they're not? So then we can kind of confirm that. So we'll have that confirmation.
I mean, are you even aware, on your map here, it doesn't show up, but there's 2 gigantic targets left over from World War II. I'm talking, each target's as big as a football field or bigger that they used to drop. They're still there. That's kind of historical stuff there to me.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I don't see you go up there and ruin anything like that.
We'll see some of those kind of features. They're outside of our project area and they're outside of the areas that have been studied for both cultural. We know of other resources in the area, but they're not tied to our project and we're not going to cap them because our work is very selective and specific.
The road that goes up to Mahoney Park to the top of the mountain, we used to go up there all the time, and there's a whole little mining area up there, you know, there's still posts with house addresses and everything on them up there. Is that part of what you're looking at dealing with? Is that included in this?
So that would have been, included in the cultural resource study, but we wouldn't be impacting, you know, we'd be making sure that we're away from those features and we wouldn't be having any effect on those. We'd only be focusing on just the mine features themselves.
Yeah.
And safeguarding those,
Because otherwise you'd almost have to come in by helicopter up there, I assume.
Yeah, I think one of the things is we're, you know, because this project has such remote access and difficult access, and we're talking about using a helicopter for a lot of it to drop. A lot of it, including the materials and also the welding equipment, everything has to be basically transported up there.
Can I come? By the time I hike up there, I have to turn around and come down because it's gonna be dark and I'm too tired to do anything when I get
First, I'd like to say, I do not believe the mines are hazardous to anybody that has common sense. I used to belong to many of these mines, and you've given me a nice map of where I can find some more to speak. There's never been a death in any of these mines up there. I find them culturally interesting to see what was done on these mountains throughout our history. I find them all very interesting. Going down those mines, and I'm sorry, the 200-foot deep ones are the most adventurous. They're the best.
Yeah, that's kind of true too, why all of a sudden, is this a big project?
Well, in most states, they've already done this
Well,
in
most
mountains.
states, that's true.
I mean, I'm surprised it hasn't been done before now.
We've had several, abandoned mine deaths in New Mexico, and one is too many, and in this area, we've been lucky. In some places, there's been numerous accidents, but, you know, we still don't want anybody to die. The BLM has a liability for those features. You know, they've been sued all over the country, because people are falling and getting hurt in abandoned mines. So that's part of their issue. And our issue is to keep people out of abandoned mines and keep them safe. But even though a lot of these are historic features, and the idea of putting gates on, or it's not just necessarily for wildlife. We do a lot of closures just to preserve the historic workings and keep the public out. But if you're a landowner and you still want to go in, well, we provide locking removable bars so you can see. We can't tell you can't go into your mine. So we just, you know, it gives you protection from somebody else getting hurt. So it takes away your liability to have us put a gate on a feature that you own.
So like what he's saying,
Follow-up question, sir.
people like him couldn't go up in there anymore.
No, and a lot of the bigger workings are on private patented lands, and I know a lot of people explore, but they're also trespassing, and on public land, yeah, you can go in these features, but they're extremely hazardous. And I know, yeah, you've explored a lot. I've been underground in many of these. They're extensive, but, you know, just been lucky nothing bad has happened.
Follow-up question. Can these mines releases be renewed? Can some be renewed, or